CNBC-TV18 Weekender.
Hello and welcome to CNBC-TV18 Weekender. I'm Shruti Mishra. My guest today is one of the most respected filmmakers of our country. He's been awarded the Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan and the Dada Saheb Phalke Award for Lifetime Achievement and many more. He started as a filmmaker in 1977 with his film Ankur, and since then there has been no looking back. With over 4 decades of experience, he's directed over 1,000 advertising commercials, 65 documentaries and short films, and almost all his films have won national awards. I'm talking about none other than Master Director Shyam Benegal. I'm at his office in Mumbai. Let's go inside and meet him and know about his inspiration, his style of filmmaking and his future projects. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on CNBC-TV18 Weekender. Now, let me start asking you about the life you had while growing up in Hyderabad. How was your early life? How were you as a child? And what were your early influences in life?
Well, you see, I come from a very large family, meaning my parents had 10 children.
Okay.
So I was the youngest of the boys. We have four brothers and 6 sisters. And being the youngest, there were advantages and disadvantages.
Sure.
You know, the disadvantage was that I only had to wear hand-me-down clothes. There were hardly any clothes made specifically for me. So that was the disadvantage. But the advantage was that being the youngest son, particularly, I had it really good, you know, because I had an older brother.
So all responsibilities were taken care of
by him, and if anything went wrong, he was the one who was caught for all my misdemeanors as well.
Yeah.
So it was a great time.
Your dad was a professional photographer,
right,
and you chose physics and maths and then went on to choose economics for your master's degree, totally alien to filmmaking.
Decision, I think, largely forced by the fact that I grew up in Hyderabad. My interest was always in the cinema from the very beginning.
Okay.
Largely for 2 reasons. One, of course, my father used to being a still photographer, but his hobby was to make films.
Okay.
16 millimeter silent films. And he used to make films, his main thing was to make films about his own growing family. And we have films about each one of us children from the time we were born until the next child came.
Wow.
So film was very familiar from the time I remember.
Yeah.
And we also had a cinema house very close to where I lived. And it used to show Indian films for 3 days or 4 days of the week.
Okay.
And American, British films 3 days of the week, because it was a garrison cinema, you know, it was a cinema for the army garrison.
Yeah.
And until I was, 9, 10 or more, India was still under the British.
Yes. Yeah.
So you had this army there and so on and so forth. And so I could get to see those films anytime I wanted.
Okay.
And I had projectionists who were friends of mine.
Yeah.
So I used to go and watch the films from the projection booth. So I was seeing films all the time.
All the time.
So there was no, nothing was unfamiliar to me.
You started with a job as a copywriter, then obviously graduated to creative and accounts group head. What inspired you to be a filmmaker? You know, you started with advertising, the whole transition to be a filmmaker.
Well, it was not easy for me to become a filmmaker straight off.
Yeah.
For several reasons. One, when I was growing up and when I finished my school, there was no film school.
Yeah.
And there was no film school, full stop, anywhere in the country. After that, I went through college. My interest, of course, constantly was the cinema.
Yeah.
And I already had a cousin who was a filmmaker here in Bombay. You see, Gurudat, he was already here. And so he was a source of great inspiration that I could become a filmmaker if I chose to be one. And in fact, I told him that I would like to come and work with him, etc. And he, of course, was trying to dissuade me, really. I don't think he was trying to encourage me, because he knew that, it's not always the easiest thing to do. At that time, there were no opportunities in the cinema. But I came because I was also very interested in communications generally. And the main reason for that was you see, we used to have these inter-university youth festivals in Delhi. And one of the things I remember at that time was Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister of India. And he made a speech which affected me enormously on mass communications. And he was also talking about how communications can be on different levels, on a conscious level, on a subconscious level, on an unconscious level. And he was talking about something at that time was very new, which was subliminal communications. And subliminal communications became a very important feature in advertising. So that is why I got very caught up in what he said. And so when I finished college and a little bit of teaching, then I came to Bombay seeking work in an advertising agency until I could go into the movies. But soon enough, within maybe a few months of my being in advertising, I already started, because that was the time, that was before television, pre-television. So there used to be agencies like Lintas, where I had joined, and there were one or two other agencies who used to have a large film department. And Alex Padamsee, the famous theatre person, he was the head of the department. And when he found that I was interested in it, then he got me involved. So I started to write and direct advertising films, which gave me a great amount of I learned on the job, as it were.
Exactly,
So there really was no need for me to go to a film school.
True. From commercials to filmmaking, that too with a film like Ankur, that had a very unorthodox theme. It was released in 1974, and this has been over 40 years now. How do you think Indian cinema has evolved since you released Ankur?
The Ankur was the first one that I made, but it was a film that I wanted to make ever since I was in college. Because I had written a script for that film since then. And it was very difficult for me to, I used to take that script and go around to different film producers hoping that they would catch, but nobody did. And so I was in a pretty poor situation, but I didn't lose heart, you see. So I kept going with that script. And I remember at a party one evening, Mohan Bujlani confronting me saying, you keep saying you want to make films, and what are you wasting your time in advertising? I said, you give the money, I'll make a movie. He said,
so that's how it happened.
That's how it happened. He said, done. But he said, it shouldn't cost too much money. I said, money is not the thing, because it's not important that I should have lots of money to make the film. But I said, I have a script and I will make the film. At that time, there was no television, right? So when television came and became nationwide, everybody, so television became the big medium, not film. So film itself lost ground on account of television. And having lost ground, in order to survive, cinema then had to strategize, do different kinds of strategy. So you developed the blockbusters, which meant that films started to cost a lot of money to make. Because if you're going to compete against television, you had to offer something much bigger than what you would do in television. So that made it more difficult for young filmmakers, unproved filmmakers, but with ideas and so on and so forth, to make the films that they would like to make, because small films had no opportunities. So then the NFDC came into the picture to offer such filmmakers, But then again, distribution was a huge challenge. So then there was another kind of thing that developed, that is, you made features, but specifically for television, or that you gave that film an opportunity to earn back by selling your film very quickly, the moment it was released in the cinema, to offer it to television. Those kind of things. So you had all of that. But so I've been part of that history, of cinema in India.
And you also have a knack of finding talent, You picked up Shabana Azmi fresh out of FTII, Smita Patil while she was reading news at Doordarshan. How did you gauge their caliber so early on?
Perhaps I do have the ability to spot acting talent. I think I probably do.
True.
I've been right most of the time.
And all your actors have gone and won national awards. So.
Yes, also. And you see, but with people like Shabana and Smita and so on, and Nasiruddin Shah and Om Puri and a whole lot of them, they were all enormous talents. They were extremely talented people. Shabana, of course, there was no question about it, that she was a hugely talented person. And when she came to see me the first time, I not only offered one film, I offered her two.
Okay.
And she didn't believe me for a bit. But actually she
was,
though.
Yeah.
She did in both my first two films.
Okay.
But the funny part of it is that she didn't believe me at that time. She went and told her mother, he said, here's this crackpot who says, not one, but he's offering me two films. That sort of thing. But then came Smita, and I took her for a children's film, Charandas Chor.
Yes.
And then, of course, she was such a natural talent. Two things about her. Not only was she a natural talent, she was totally untrained. Shabana was a trained actress.
Yeah. Very
professional, and preparing for a part and all this kind of thing. Smita had a certain kind of spontaneity to her. It could be hit or miss.
Okay.
But it was usually hit, not miss.
You're one of the pioneers of parallel cinema in India, yet you despise the word parallel. Why is that so?
That is a term that I've always hated. It doesn't make any sense at all. Parallel means that running in parallel lines. Things are not running in parallel lines. Either there's a good film or a bad film.
Okay.
A good film, you can make a commercially oriented film, which can be very good. And you can make a film that's not commercially oriented, which can be awful.
True.
So where's the parallel? They're not running parallel. There can only be one definition, and that definition is either you make a good film or you make a bad film.
You've made several documentaries and several television series, the most prominent one being Bharat Ek Khoj, which is based on Jawaharlal Nehru's discovery of India. How was it then working for the edit box? It was new.
Doordarshan had become nationwide. And nationwide television was very new as far as India was concerned. There were three major series that they planned, as you know. First was Ramayana, because these are foundational epics. The second one was Mahabharata. And the third one was Discovery of India, which was Jawaharlal Nehru's book on Indian history.
Yes.
And that's one I chose, because all three of us, Mr. B.R. Chopra, Mr. Ramanand Sagar, and I, all three of us are sitting there when Doordarshan is talking to us, saying, what would you like to do? So, of course, the seniors first. So, B.R. Chopra immediately said, I'll want to do Mahabharata.
Oh. So it came like that too.
Yes, it happened. And Ramanand Sagar said, I'll do Raman. So I said, wonderful. I'll do the history of India.
Well, on that note, it's time for a short break, but don't go anywhere as we find out how Shyam Benegal swayed a whole generation with his films. Stay tuned.
CNBC-TV18 Weekender.